today we're here with Parson Orosi and he'll tell us a little bit about his masks. Can you tell us a little bit about challenging, inspiring stuff that happened during the creation of the mask?
For sure. So challenging and inspiring, I can relate this because this is the first time I was given the challenge to take pieces of plaster and that I had never dealt with and turn it into pieces of art. I was inspired after researching Magnifico's mask to try and transform that into life with my mask. It was a challenge for me to create exaggerated features such as the nose and enhance it to make the mask come to life within my character. As you can tell right here.
So can you tell me a little bit about imagining and generating of your mask?
So yeah, inspiring and generating. Although my character for the performance was the first actor, I was inspired by the principal and most important character of Commedia dell'arte, which is Pantalone. I did research on a character's role and found out that he is part of the top of the social order. I was inspired with the look of the character and everything from how the character dressed to how he behaved, which made me want to try and regenerate the character within my mask.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit about your planning and focusing of the mask.
For sure. So prior to creating the mask and bringing it to life, I sketched out and colored a copy of the mask and used an outline copy of what the Pantalone mask needed to look like, which in order to make it look realistic. So I can show you right here that this is the model I used offline. So I tried to use the color shading and every exaggerated feature right above me, and I sketched this on a piece of paper so at all times I could have this model in front of me to have the most accurate version of the mask I need to create.
Can you tell me a little bit about your exploration and experimenting in the creation of the mask?
Sure. So I used a variety of paint, as you can tell, a couple of paint mixes that I mixed together to find the perfect color blend I needed to apply to the mask, such as a dull gold. I also used highlighting and art techniques, which obviously I wasn't very familiar with, so I had to use some paper towel masks underneath the mask and the plaster in order to make these exaggerated features, as I also learned, and enlargement of the noses that I needed.
Tell me a little bit about exploring and experimenting on the creation of your mask.
For sure. So I used the variety of paint mixes, as you can tell within my mask right here, to find the perfect color and blend that I needed in my mask, which was like kind of like a dull gold color. Using highlighting and art techniques that obviously I wasn't very familiar with, so I researched them and learned them off of YouTube, kind of like makeup techniques. I was able to learn how to emphasize my character's wrinkles and cheekbones and shading in areas that needed emphasis, like under the eyes I had wrinkles, and along the wrinkles, along with around the cheekbones, I used like basic highlighting techniques that I learned off of YouTube.
Can you tell me a little bit about producing your preliminary work of your mask?
Yeah, for sure. So in order to create my character's cheekbones right here, I had to add layers of paper towel as well as introducing or protruding to give me the protruding look, and as well as the enlargement of the nose features that I needed. I used paper towel, which I learned a technique from the teacher, to stuff underneath the nose and along as the cheekbones, and as well as to produce my wrinkles that I needed.
Interesting. Tell me a bit about revising and refining your mask.
Sure. So I also use feedback in this section because during this stage, I took some feedback from my peers from the preliminary work, the sketches, and the ideas I had created thus far. Therefore, I was able to purify my ideas and incorporate their feedback to refine my plans with final revision. Also, I was given feedback from a teacher on how to effectively add the string, as I needed to use a special knife to poke holes and add the string to fit my character's face.
Interesting. Now tell me a little bit about presenting and performing with the mask.
Exactly. So actually what I did here is my characters, as I discussed, didn't wear the mask, so I didn't require to wear it. However, I lent my mask to the character in the play who was playing Magnifico because he was very interested in how well I created my mask and how well I was able to bring it to life. Thus, it went along with the scene and the character that was being presented. It was very appropriate for him.
Interesting. Now tell me a little bit about the reflecting and evaluating.
For sure. So I looked back on the process and what I created, and had the teacher evaluate my piece of work of art that I created within a mask. I reflected on the process and thought of ways that I could try to improve the mask if I was to do it again in the final result, such as perhaps using more gold or overtones. Therefore, I was able to connect my mask to each 9 parts of the CP.
Apply the elements of drama to your group performance.
That's a very good question. So to start off, we used focus, which was one of the key dramatic elements to really bring our whole cast together because we all needed to be in unison. So when we were able to focus on the scene and the personas we had to put on, we really applied this into our Commedia dell'arte performance. Secondary, we used tension. Tension was where we built the conflict. We showed how each one of these characters had their own little tensions or conflicts, whether it was between the first character and the second character that I represented as myself, the first actor and the first actress. We had a little bit of a tension because we each wanted to compete with who was better. Also the timing. The timing was very important within our blocking and the gestures we had to present. So if the timing was off, then our whole performance would have been off. So we really had to practice on the gestures we showed throughout a performance to make sure everything worked together as one. The rhythm was also very important because there was the tempo and the beat that we had to follow in our performance as a rule. So if our timing piece of the drama and the pace was off with our talking, we try to follow the same kind of pace, and the language we spoke, it was off of English. It was different. So we had to speak in the same rhythm and consistency in order to keep all our characters together and not fall off of track. And the contrast within the performance was without this contrast, it would have been very boring. So we had to add sort of like a little bit of a theme or some space or the rhythm and bring everything together. So within the scenes where we had characters who were very serious, we followed it with scenes where we had characters very comedically. So we had Harlequino come in and add some comedy after we had the first actor and first actress come on and show some very serious. The mood was also very important because without generating a mood, the whoever's watching the play doesn't really have kind of like a genre scene to follow. So by having the mood set in the scene and just by the tone of the voices of the characters, everyone was able to follow along very clearly. Spatial recognition was also very important. We try to use in our blocking most of the space around us to really show some diversity in the dramatic performance and show a difference, because if all the characters were standing in the same spot and not using the space around us, then we wouldn't really be able to tell what was happening. So it gets very boring. Language was also very important because of the vocal expressions we use. As I kind of touched on already, in the Commedia dell'arte, you can tell that the characters, they don't really speak English. They speak their own kind of dialect. So the language and the tone added a little bit of comedic effect because we weren't used to hearing it, as well as it really set the tone for every character and how they were supposed to behave. Different characters spoke differently and made different noises. Which kind of relates to the sound of every character that they made. So like Harlequino's laugh was very important, and also we had the server with his laugh it added effect to the play. So the sound enhancements and the sound gestures added a lot to the scene and the characters that we were all able to bring together within our performance. Symbolism was also important because it shows the greater meaning within the play. So behind all the what could have been the comedic or like the jokes or the plot, everyone was able to tell the symbolism because of how we portrayed each character. As every character came on the stage, they sort of gave themselves they had a little monologue or a little bit of dialogue to give a sense of who their character was, which symbolized if they were a happy character, sad character, happy or sad or negative, and we were able to portray that in our performance for everyone to be able to catch along and see where we're going. And within the play, we also had some conflicts. So the conflicts were within, you could tell with some characters, the conflicts of power. Power was one of the main conflicts between the actor and actress, second actor and actress. You could tell the obvious conflicts that were within power with these characters. And then at the end of the play, when we all came onto the stage, we showed a scene of the most powerful character winning the fighting scene. We had a little bit of a fighting scene, and this was the climax point because we could tell that at the end of the play, or in the middle of the play, the most important character rose to the top and showed a very climatic effect, just to add a little bit of dramatic effect to the scene. So therefore, that's how our scene for Commedia dell'arte related to the 12 dramatic elements.
What is your self-assessment of your performance in the show?
Very good question. So using the critical analysis process, I can start off by saying my initial reaction of our presentation and our performance. So initially, I thought our scene was pretty good. the first time we ran through it. And then over the final production afterwards, my self-assessment was that I thought our play was good. It was outside of a lot of our comfort zones, and it was something very new. So having that in mind, I was actually very impressed, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I think that we did very good as a cast, as we were able to, with the short amount of time we have, choreography and cast and perform as unison our scene. And I thought in the final production, we all did our jobs pretty well and presented it with the most successful outcome. Analysis and interpretation. So my self-assessment of being able to analyze and interpret the scene was that it was a little difficult for me to understand, what was going on. So I had to go ahead and research some information about the scene. Overall, I think this was okay for our whole cast as a whole for our production. But on my part, I feel like I did a good research, and my assessment on the fact that I was able to analyze the play, and interpret it, I feel like we did a pretty good job in our final production as we communicated with each other and were able to give reflections and feedback to one another to present for our production. Now, for my consideration of the cultural context, this was probably the most difficult part that we struggled on, because we had a little bit of trouble to put the scene into context, because it's a different scene. We were trying to understand the different classifications of each one of the characters. This was the most difficult part. We have to use a planner to figure out where each character fell in the social ordering. Magnifico being at the top, and we had to understand what each character's role was. Overall, if I was to self-assess myself, I had a very good understanding on where each character was and where the first actor, first actress, Magnifico, Harlequino, Pantalone, all of these characters fell into part, and we did a good job to bring all these characters to life in the play. Expression of aesthetic judgment, and that we were able to reflect on, was that we are all able to use our costumes. We use special costumes, masks, physical expression, verbal expression, and we use this all as a part of our aesthetic judgments. So if I was to judge our aesthetics, I thought it was pretty good and we produced it well, because we all were able to appropriately adjust what we were. Anybody could just put on a costume or wear whatever they wanted, but we tried to use, by researching, we used appropriate costumes to aesthetically represent what we were. So that's how I would self-assess ourself and our cast, myself as well included, through the critical analysis process. So we're talking Stratford trailer now. Interesting. So using the creative analysis process, I can reflect on the trailer to see if it was determined to be effective or not. Personally, I believe the trailer was very effective, because my initial thoughts or my initial reaction was that I was very intrigued. Using the jump frames, the cut frames, the words, the visuals, the music, everything, the matching acoustics, I believe that I was very intrigued. My reaction, what brought to mind was, I want to see this. So thus it made me very intrigued to see it, and that was my initial reaction. It was very interesting. So my analysis and interpretation of the scene was that the theme was very suspenseful. So I saw different variations between Romeo and Juliet, To Kill a Mockingbird, and things like that. So I believe that the actor was trying to, or whoever made the trailer was trying to tell me that the play is going to be very suspenseful, interesting, very climatic because of the music and everything that was the acoustics and the sound brought to life in the play. Furthermore, my consideration of the cultural text, when I saw the trailer, I saw different types of costumes, which gave me the cultural context. So I saw, Romeo and Juliet is based further back in the years, and then we have modern day society. I saw there was a transgender, which was on the screen. This brings stories from our modern day society, and we had older costumes from ages ago. And so I saw that there was different cultures here, different years, and different variations within the one trailer that I saw. The expression of aesthetic judgment. So it kind of ties on to the aesthetic judgment. I saw how they expressed everything throughout the trailer with music, costumes, the visuals that came on the screen. Everything was paced perfectly with the rhythm. So as there was noises made, the aesthetics that were on the screen, noises made with people on the screen was matched with the words on the screen, which was matched with the sound of the screen. And so aesthetically, I can judge the play being that it was very, very interesting, very suspenseful, And based off of the way the characters were dressed and how everyone was portrayed, the costumes were very lively, very realistic with the blood and everything coming off on the screen. Therefore, I can use the critical analysis process to conclude that the trailer was very effective. So, some rationale that the festival might provide if I asked them to justify the choice of the productions this year was very simple and came to my mind when I saw the play. And that being that they chose the most interesting performances or plays or stories to reenact that everyone would be interested in. To Kill a Mockingbird is a very good example of this, with Atticus Finch and all the entities and activities that happen in the story. We teach it to students in high school, so it's a very popular storyline. Julius Caesar, Shakespearean classic that everyone's very familiar with. So along with other ones, the Rocky Horror Show, these are all very popular picks. So they pretty much chose very popular picks with very good storylines to, attract the best demographic and population they could, which was a rationale that they could have behind the productions they chose to entail this year. Ah, yes, very good question you raise. So, what I can share from the experiences I have gained in the theatrical class and the training on my CV in a way that's connected to my pathway. Well, first of all, my pathway is university, which is where I would be going next year and beyond. So, the skills I learned in this class were very much the opposite of what I'm used to acquiring in school, such as analytical skills in a classroom from day-to-day basis. And this classroom is a very real-life practical situation where I was thrown in a pool with people I have not necessarily collaborated with before. So it taught me to get out of my comfort zone. And productions are not something I'm very familiar with. So this enables me to put on my CV that I'm a very flexible student now, or a very flexible person in a work environment. In university, I'm going to be put into many challenges where I'm working with students I've never really experienced work with. But luckily, in my theatrical class, I was taught to collaborate with students and come out of my comfort zone producing productions in front of people I'm not very familiar with. Therefore, from the training such as improvisation, I have become very comfortable to collaborate with my peers and have discussions in front of very large groups as you do in the theatrical environment. And all these trainings have only benefited me and will benefit me in university when I put into an environment that I'm not very comfortable with. So how I can conclude an effective dramaturgical summary of each of Stratford's 2018, each 12 of them, is initially starting with The Tempest. So pretty much what I got from watching these trailers is that The Tempest is in the midst of a storm with a ship that contains the King of Naples, and his party struggles to stay afloat. On land, Prospero and his daughter Miranda watch the storm evolve from the ship. The main character, or Prospero as well, has created the storm with magic, and he explains that his enemies are on board the ship. From Julius Caesar, what I got is Julius Caesar takes place way back 44 BC, around then. Julius Caesar has just re-entered Rome and triumphed after a victory in Spain over the sons of his old enemies. So Pompey the Great, and a spontaneous celebration is interrupted and broken up by Flavius Marellus, two political enemies of Caesar, which is the main plot pretty much around there. From a long day's journey into night, the entire story actually takes place in a character called Tyrone's summer home. The year is 1912 from what I've researched, and the time is in one August morning. Mary and Jane, they have entered after breakfast. They learn that Mary has most recently returned from treatment at the sanatorium because she has a morphine addiction. So Napoli Millionara. Life is hard in Naples, and this was during World War II. So famine in Rome is causing unrest between the common people and the patricians. The people particularly represent the arrogant Caius Marcius, son of Alumna, who makes no secret of the fact that he despises them. So a little bit of that there. Meredith Wilson's The Music Man. This plot concerns conman Harold Hill, who are produced as a boys band organizer and leader, and sells band instruments and uniforms to naive Loa townsfolks and promising to train the members of a new band. Harold is no musician, however he plans to skip town without giving any music lessons. So To Kill a Mockingbird, the classic story of To Kill a Mockingbird that we all are familiar with, is around the lawyer Scott Finch, her father Atticus Finch, who's a lawyer, and then this is around the Great Depression time, and then the rape of Miela Ewell causes a lot of problems in the town. Bronte is an orphan as an infant. Jane Eyre lives with Gateshead with her aunt Sarah Reed as the novel opens. And Jane is just 10 years old. As an outsider in the Reed family, her female cousins Georgina and Elizabeth tolerate but don't love her. So the comedy of errors is Aegon, a merchant from Syracuse, is found in Ephesus and is brought before Cellinius the Duke, where he pleads for his life. Many years ago, Egan and his wife, Amelia, they were in a shipwreck with their identical two sons, both Antipholius, and a pair of identical twin slaves, both named Dromio. So it's a little interesting there. The Rocky Horror Show now. In this cult classic, we have a sweethearts between Brad and Janet. They're stuck at a flat tire during a storm. Discover eerie mansion of Dr. Frank and Futner, transvestite scientist. As their innocence is lost, Brad and Janet meet a house full of wild characters, including a rocking biker and a creepy butler. So through elaborate dances and rock songs, Frank and Furter unveils his latest creation, a muscular man named Rocky. And to conclude my last two, An Ideal Husband. This story opens with Sir Robert Chiltern, I researched, and Lady Gertrude Chiltern have had a dinner party at their home in Grosvenor Square. And Sir Chiltern is a member of House of Commons, and a number of people attend the party at the house, including Mrs. Chevalier, a childhood enemy of Lady Chiltern. So it's based around that story. And finally, Paradise Lost is about Adam and Eve. Very interesting, I presume, and how they came to be created and how they came to lose their place in the Garden of Eden, also called Paradise. It's the same story you find in the pages of Genesis, expanded by Milton into a very long, detailed narrative poem. Therefore, this summarizes each of Stratford's 2018 productions.